Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Haolonggood release. Yes, the Concavenator is already here. We have it here in two different color variants as you usually get from Haolonggood. As far as the box art goes, you can see a nice shot here on the front of the box showing off the Concavenator in both color variants, of course 1/35th scale, the species name, and then again the Haolonggood logo. On the side, the Haolonggood logo. On the other side, the Haolonggood logo. Up here on the top, a really cool little area here, kind of like a checklist showing off quite a few different figures. On the bottom, all ceratopsians. On the top, we've got all sorts of carnivores up here, which is really fun. Again, definitely showing off that they have quite the bit of variety in their line, and obviously both sides pretty much sport the same images. So let's pop these out of the box and check them out. So here are our different variants of the Concavenator. There's the first version, and then we've also got this version. Now, I don't know which one, I don't know which one we would say is the better of the two. There we go. Overall, I kind of feel like I'm leaning more toward the darker variant. I just feel like looks a little more natural. But one thing I will say is they definitely look nicer in hand than I was expecting them to. Definitely nicer in hand than some of the images I had seen of them. But I will say I definitely see a little sloppiness when it comes to the paintwork on these. But let's go ahead, take that one out of the screen here for a moment. We'll bring this one in for a nice closer look. As far as the head sculpt goes, that is a gorgeous Concavenator head sculpt. I think overall they've done a great job on the sculpt in fine detail. You can see kind of like some larger scales moving along the jawline, much finer scales. As you move up further into the head, we can also see a little variation of color with different shades of greens and even lighter tones, as well as some darker patterning. The patterning is applied quite nicely, and there's a dry brushing over a lot of the figure here in the face that really helps to highlight some of the scales, and that dry brushing definitely making those scales pop on the lower jaw right there. But you can see the inside of the mouth is sculpted pretty decently. We've got some insanely tiny teeth, which are painted fairly decently for their size. A little sloppy on this side. You can definitely see a little bit of sloppiness, maybe just a little too much paint, but the teeth are incredibly small, so I can definitely imagine that being a little bit of a difficult task. On the inside of the mouth, we can see the tongue sculpted out in there. A nice light tone as well as a red wash has been applied. Look at that. That looks awesome, actually, in there. We can see the throat and everything in the back, as well as that red wash helping to make the detail of the inside of the mouth pop quite nicely. As you move up into the eyes, we can see the eyes are painted with a black. They do have a nice gloss coat. And that's really about it as far as that area goes. But one thing that I will say I see sloppiness with as far as this figure goes is there's like a pinkish tone here. And I don't know if it's meant to kind of run around the, upper jaw here. I have seen it on quite a few different images where it kind of runs around the upper jaw. And you can see it starts out there doing that. But then when we get over here, it kind of stops short and is just definitely a little inconsistent. But it's I don't know if it's like the red wash and maybe it's escaped out there onto the mouth, or if it's meant to be that way, but it definitely is a little inconsistent as far as mine goes, but it's not really a big deal. As we move back, we can see the ears. We can see they're also highlighted with a darker tone. We also start to pick up a striping effect moving down along the back. The skin texture continues to remain pretty fine overall. We have some osteoderms popping up and stuff leading down through the neck. We can even see some tensing. The dinosaur has its head turned toward its left, which you can definitely see right there. We can see a lighter tone moving along the spinal column, and then some pretty cool greenish tones moving down along the majority, honestly, of the figure. And even a slight kind of like bumpy look to the back of the spinal column, kind of like some osteoderms following along the spinal column as well. The patterning is really nicely applied as usual. Nice and smooth airbrushing it looks like that they've applied to it. On the underside, we can see the throat right there. Quite a bit of skin wrinkling and stuff, and very impressive scale detail, especially as you lead down there toward the arms. You can really see those scales popping pretty nicely. Unfortunately, no dark wash that we can see on the underside of this one, but it still looks pretty smooth. We've got a nice light orange for the underside of the Concavenator. As you lead down into the arms, you can see we actually have some like quills or feathers there sticking off of the back of the elbow leading down along the forearm area, and we can also see a little variation of color as we start out with the greens and the darker tones, and we transition to kind of like that light orangish sort of tone as you lead down into the hands, leading out through the fingers. We can see some scoots following along those fingers, and they have been highlighted with a dry brushing. And then we've got the nails sculpted out nicely. They actually have a genuine sharp look to them, and they are painted with, looks like a dark brownish tone. Moving back up into the stomach, we can see a little bit more of that light orange right there. We can also see how the skin is stretching off of the stomach because of the positioning of the leg. We very naturally transition back up into the green, and you can see again more of that patterning moving through. We have that classic Concavenator sort of a hump up here on the back that is highlighted with an orangish tone, definitely giving it a nice element of flashiness in that area. And we can see the scale detail popping really nicely in that spot. Moving down into the leg, we can make out the hip bone. There is a little bit of that orangish tone moving along the back of the thigh, but that does disappear as you move down into the calf, which you can again see a nice big bulging calf muscle. We have more of that patterning moving down through the leg, but the leg pretty much becomes overtaken with that darker tone as you lead into the knee and then down through the shin. Leading into the foot, we can see some variations of browns and stuff picking up nice curvatures to the toes as the dinosaur is taking a step and walking along. There is, again, quite a bit of variation of color there, and even maybe like a light wash, it looks like, possibly in the foot. The nails, again, having a fairly nice look to them, again, painted with, I think, the dark brown, but they're so small it's honestly hard to make it out. We can see the dew claws as well over there. But then we lead back up and we have some skin wrinkles here leading off of the back of the thigh. Again, the nice variations of greens as well as that very cool striping effect leading out through the tail. The tail does lead down, but then kind of curves up and kind of to the left, I would say, as you lead out there toward the end of the tail. And we also have a little variation of like a darker orange as you lead out there toward the tip of the tail. The skin texture also looks pretty darn nice leading out. If you take a look at the opposing side, obviously the Concavenator is now looking away from us, so we're going to see that displayed in the sculpt. You can kind of see how the skin and everything is stretching and tensing because of the turn in the neck. There are more of those osteoderms leading down into the body. The arm on this side is held in pretty much the same position as we see on the other side, and I feel like that's a nice natural spot for the arms to be held in. There is a little bit of dry brushing over the arms over here as well. We do see a little less of the stomach on this side because of the leg taking a step forward, kind of obscuring the stomach a little bit. But one other area that I do notice a little sloppiness would be when it comes to that hump up there on the back. Some of the orange is kind of like, you can see a spot of it there, a spot there, and then a spot down here. Like it's just randomly run down into the side of my figure. I don't know. There's another spot there. I don't know if it's meant to do that. It doesn't seem like it was meant to do that. So just a slight bit of sloppiness on the paintwork of mine. But leading down, we have basically the same, patterning and everything, the same coloration leading down through the leg, a little bit of a dry brushing effect as you lead down, helping to highlight the scales. We can obviously see the skin stretching here in the thigh as the leg is taking a step forward and also bunching the skin up in the stomach. Again, we've got that nice looking foot sculpt with the variations of browns and a very bird-like foot sculpt, honestly, which you can really appreciate, again, how bird-like it looks, I think, when you look at this side, when you look at this foot, especially considering the toes are kind of spread out as it's taking a step. And then again, we lead out into the tail, and you've got the nice curvatures of the tail, and the orange is actually more vibrant on this side. Over here it's kind of dark. Over here on this side it's fairly vibrant if my camera focuses, which you can see right there. And then moving along the underside, we do have the cloaca present. Again, some more of those orange kind of speckles down here, which I don't know if they're meant to be there or not. And then we lead along the underbelly, which does have a very impressive sculpt. Sculpt wise, it is absolutely gorgeous. Definitely one of the best Concavenators I've ever seen. Paint-wise, it's pretty nice, but a little sloppy. Then we also have the way more vibrant variation, which actually initially I was thinking was probably my least favorite, but now I'm kind of thinking maybe this is the one I'm more fond of. I'm not sure why. I just really like this dry brushing that they've applied to this one. So sculpt-wise, it's going to be the same as the other one. Paint-wise, very different. Sort of similar as far as like the overall design goes, but very different tones of color. So here in the face, we can obviously see we've got a fairly bright kind of like a yellowish tone for the body color, and there's a strong dry brushing that has been run over the majority of the face. Some areas the dry brushing looks really good, some areas it looks a little bit sloppy, but overall it looks okay. The reddish tone that kind of runs along the jawline is present on this one as well, but as you can see, it's kind of run down onto the lower jaw, just sort of looking a little sloppy again. And see, you don't see that over here, but you actually don't even see the reddish tone on the upper jaw at all. So I'm really unsure as to what the intention was with that reddish tone. Like, I don't know if it's meant to be there or not, but we can see the dry brushing actually looks really nice on this side. The eye is painted pretty nicely, again, given the nice gloss coat. The inside of the mouth has the light tones, actually a little bit of variation, as if my camera would just focus on it. We have like almost like the yellowish tones in here with the reddish wash, but then you have a slightly different shade of color there for the tongue, and then the pinkish tones as you move back, again with that red wash really highlighting all of the detail. The throat looking awesome back there again. We can obviously see the skin kind of stretching here as the dinosaur has its mouth open. As we lead back, we start to pick up an orange moving along the top of the dinosaur that follows along the spinal column, and then we also have all of those patterns and everything similar to the way we had seen them on the first version, and even including the orangish tone moving along the underside of the throat, but it basically is contained right here to the throat before moving to the yellowish sort of a tone, and then reappearing again down here, but less vibrant than what we see in the throat. But you can see even the underbelly sports that nice dry brushing, and right here you can really see how nice and natural that dry brushing looks as far as the way it's applied. And I feel like moving through the entire body, you can obviously see it here, the dry brushing works really nicely on this figure when it's not like, you know, too thick or anything. Like, we do see a little bit of that in the face, but for the most part, the dry brushing down here I think looks really well done. Basically the same sort of look here moving through the body, a little bit of a brighter yellow it looks like possibly for the hands. The paintwork in that area as well isn't exactly perfect. We can see the nails painted with a black, again the patterning moving down through the arms, and also that dry brushing highlighting even those feathers there. Moving back, you see a little bit more of that orange in the lower part of the stomach, but the majority of the figure in this area is just a mixture of the yellows with the dry brushing and then the dark brown patterning. Up here in the hump area of our Concavenator, we do have like a fairly dark, almost like a pinkish tone bordering on a red, and then again we continue to have the light oranges moving along the back of the leg, some variations of browns and yellows moving down the rest of the leg with the dry brushing leading down into the foot. We have some more of the oranges down here, again in the feet of the dinosaur, and then we lead back up. We have more of the yellows with the striping effect as we lead out into the tail, and you can see the curvature here at the end transitions again to an orange just like the other one did, and pretty much the same thing when you look over here. Again, I don't really notice anything that's too different from one side to the other as far as the paintwork goes. The sculpt is honestly excellent. I feel like this is definitely a really impressive and maybe the best looking Concavenator on the market when it comes to the sculpt. Just a little sloppy in some areas on the paint, but overall it is definitely a really nice looking Concavenator. As far as a size goes, for a length, obviously it's a very small figure. For a length, you were looking at about 6.5 inches or around 17 centimeters, and then for a height, just shy of 2 3/4 inches or almost 7 centimeters on the dot. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Haolonggood Concavenator, and you can see again, fairly small in size overall. Definitely by no means is this a large figure. For a completely random comparison, just because he's sitting here, and I figure a lot of people have it, here is the Safari Ltd Tyrannus, which you can see is actually only a little bit bigger than the Concavenator. Then we have a comparison with the newer version of the Safari Ltd Concavenator, definitely one of my favorite versions of this species, but you can see that the Safari Ltd version is just a little bit smaller. As well as the Geo World Concavenator, which you can see is actually quite a bit bigger than the Haolonggood version. Then we've switched the Concavenator out to get this other color variant in, because I have heard people kind of comparing that one to the Papo version. It's almost like Haolonggood was like, you know what, we're going to go ahead and show you what the Concavenator should actually look like in those colors, because it's kind of similar as far as the coloration goes. Not exact, obviously, but fairly similar. However, I think from this, comparison, we could basically take two things from it. One, the Papo Concavenator is so darn ugly, and two, it's obviously a little bit bigger than the Haolonggood version. And then for two final comparisons with just two different, theropods from Haolonggood, first of all, we have the recently released Majungasaurus here, which you can see is kind of similar in size, just obviously a lot lower to the ground than our Concavenator, and a lot longer as well. And then I had to bring in my boy the Carnotaurus from Haolonggood next to the Concavenator, which you can see is definitely a little bit bigger than our Haolonggood Concavenator. So this brand new release of the 1/35th scale Concavenator from Haolonggood is pretty fun. Definitely a very nicely sculpted figure. The paint is the only slight issue for this one because there's a little bit of sloppiness to it, and I feel like it isn't quite up to the standard I'm used to when it comes to Haolonggood, but at the same time, it pretty much features the same type of thing that you are used to when it comes to pretty cool patterning, really quite flashy look and colors and stuff. Just the actual application of these two is a little bit sloppy, but for the most part, it's not too bad. I think both of the colorations that they've chosen are pretty nicely done, and it's surprising to see a dinosaur in yellow that actually looks good, looks natural, like it could be the colors of that dinosaur. Pretty impressive and kind of bold on the part of Haolonggood to go that route, but again, I think that at this point now, I would say that's probably my favorite of the two versions. The only thing, again, I'm a little confused about is the red paint on the face of, both of them actually. I don't know if that's meant to be there or not, so it's really hard to judge as far as how good that looks or how bad it does. I don't really know how to look at that because, again, I kind of feel like it's definitely sloppy, so it doesn't really look that great, but I don't know if they intended it to be there or if that's just sloppiness from the mouth. I really have no clue. Regardless, the coloration past the sloppiness of the face, I feel like on both look really good. The dry brushing in certain places is a little too intense, but overall I think it looks pretty decent, especially on the yellowish version. The colors, again, are really cool, really natural, but really flashy at the same time, and for the most part the transitions are nicely done. The patterning is fairly nicely done, and again has that classic Haolonggood look, I would say. The sculpt, though, is absolutely excellent for both of these. Haolonggood never ceases to impress when it comes to the sculpting of their figures, and they yet again have done an excellent job on the sculpts of these guys. I honestly want to grab another one and repaint it just so I can get a little more precision in my personal paint work and try to bring the detail out in this one a little bit nicer. But I feel like, again, either way, they are still two of the best Concavenators on the market, at least as far as the sculpt goes. And again, the paint apps, although a little sloppy, are pretty nicely done. So overall, if you are interested, definitely worth picking up if you ask me. So make sure you check the links that I will include in the description to Lana Time Shop, again, because that is exactly where I purchased mine, and grab them, of course, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.